Sometimes, the quietest questions arrive in the middle of the most ordinary days. You might be standing at a bus stop or rinsing a cup at the sink, when suddenly a thought passes through you like a soft shadow. How do some people keep going after so much loss? How do they still smile, still work, still show up for life? The world continues around you, cars moving, messages coming in, small tasks waiting, but that question lingers in a place deeper than words. It doesn't feel dramatic. It just feels honest, like something you've been carrying for a long time without knowing it. This story lives in that quiet place. It is not about big public moments or headlines. It's about something much subtler, the way grief settles into a person's life, and the strange, calm strength that can grow inside that space. It's inspired by the way people like Keanu Reeves and Joaquin Phoenix move through the world. Two men recognized not just for their work, but for the particular stillness that seems to follow them. A stillness that hints at old pain, but also at a kind of understanding. We won't try to tell their biographies. That's not the purpose here. Instead, we'll stay close to what is visible from a distance, how their grief, their silence, and their inner strength can mirror something very human in all of us. Because most of us, in one way or another, are learning how to carry something that once felt impossible to bear. Imagine a person, no name, no city, no specific face, just someone recognizable in their ordinariness. They have known losses over the years. Not always the kind that end up in stories, but the kind that sit in the chest and change the way you hear the world. A parent who left too early. A relationship that ended without a satisfying explanation. A friend who slowly faded away, first from messages, then from memory. And one day, this person watches a quiet interview. Keanu Reeves is asked something simple, almost casual. What do you think happens when we die? He pauses. There's a small silence. He doesn't give a philosophical speech. He doesn't try to impress anyone. He just says, gently, I know that the ones who love us will miss us. That's all. The person watching doesn't know why that sentence hits them so deeply. It's not new information, but something about the way he says it, steady, sincere, without trying to control the mystery, touches a place inside them that has been holding its breath. It feels like permission to admit that some questions don't need answers as much as they need honesty. In a different moment, the same person sees a clip of Joaquin Phoenix. He's speaking slowly about his brother, about the way loss shape him, about the difficulties and the tenderness mixed together. He talks about how someone's love can echo through your choices long after they're gone, how their presence can still guide you without noise or drama. Again, nothing sensational. Just a man sitting with his memories, not pushing them away, not polishing them for effect. A man who seems to know that grief doesn't vanish. It changes its form. The viewer feels something familiar in that, because they, too, have learned that grief isn't a single event. At first, loss arrives like a storm. Everyone sees it. People call, send messages, say the usual words. Time, they tell you, will heal. And you nod, because what else is there to say? But later, when the obvious storm has passed, something quieter remains. A silence in certain conversations. A blank space at the table. An empty seat at a celebration. A name that rises in the throat but doesn't quite reach the lips. That's where the real work of grief begins, not in the loud early days, but in the quiet seasons that follow. Grief, silence, and inner strength often appear to the world as three separate things. One is the wound. One is the absence of noise. One is the hard-earned resilience people admire from a distance. But up close, they can be intimately connected. There is a kind of grief that doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It sits in a person's gestures, in the way they listen more than they speak, in the way their eyes hold both warmth and distance. You see it in how they respond when someone else is struggling, not with speeches, but with presence. You might notice it in Keanu's quiet way of existing in public spaces, the way he gives room, the way he seems both within the world and gently apart from it. You might sense it in Joaquin's deeply felt, sometimes fragile approach to talking about his life, the way emotions seem to rise and fall without a neat script. You don't have to know their exact stories to recognize the pattern. Many people you meet every day carry something similar. You might even carry it yourself. For some, silence is a shield. For others, it's a kind of respect for the people they've lost, for the parts of themselves that are still tender. It doesn't mean they have nothing to say. It means they have learned that not everything must be said out loud to be real. There is a quiet turning point that often goes unnoticed. At first, loss feels like something happening to you. It's a force, an event, an interruption. Your mind searches for reasons. Why did this happen? Why then? Why me? Why them? The questions are sharp and restless. Sometimes they turn into anger, sometimes into numbness. But slowly, over months and years, something changes. The loss doesn't shrink, exactly. It just stops being an intruder and becomes part of the landscape. You wake up one day and realize, this is who I am now. Someone who has lost. Someone who has survived. Someone living with an absence that no one else can fully see. That realization can feel heavy. It can also be strangely clarifying. Because now, the question shifts from why did this happen, to what kind of person am I going to be, carrying this? It's in this quiet question that inner strength begins to grow. Not the kind of strength that looks impressive from the outside. Not the strength of never crying, never breaking, never needing anyone. That kind of strength is brittle. It shatters easily. The strength that grows after grief is different. It's softer, more flexible. It learns to bend without breaking. It allows tears when they come, silence when words are too small, and forgiveness when blame no longer has anywhere useful to go. People often imagine that those who have gone through a lot become either deeply broken or remarkably wise. Reality is more subtle. They become more aware. They notice the small cracks in other people's voices, the way someone changes the subject when it gets too close to pain. They understand that kindness is rarely wasted, even when unnoticed. They see how fragile plans can be, how quickly later can turn into too late. For some, like the men whose names stand on the title of this story, this awareness seems to move quietly beneath everything they do. In interviews, in conversations, even in the way they walk through a space, there is a sense of a person who has looked directly at the darker parts of life and decided, not to run, not to dramatize, but simply to continue. Continuing, in this sense, is not denial. It's not forgetting. It's a daily choice to bring your grief alongside you instead of letting it chain you to a single moment in time. Many people learn this the hard way. They spend months or years resisting what has already happened, trying to negotiate with the past. They replay conversations, imagine different endings, hold on tightly to what can no longer change. Then one day, often in a perfectly normal moment, folding laundry, washing their face, walking down a street, they feel something loosen. Not because they've moved on, but because they've finally stopped trying to push their pain away. They accept that this loss is part of their story. Not the whole story, but a chapter that cannot be skipped. And with that acceptance comes an unexpected gift: space. Space to breathe. Space to remember without falling apart every time. Space to notice that alongside the ache, there is still laughter in the world, still beauty in a sunset, still comfort in a friend's presence. Silence plays an important role in this transformation. There is the silence people fear, the empty room after someone is gone, the unanswered message, the phone that doesn't ring. That silence feels heavy, accusing, endless. But there is another kind of silence that grows slowly, like a garden after a long winter. It's the silence of sitting with your own feelings without needing to distract yourself. The silence of long walks, of journaling, of staring out a window and letting your thoughts settle like snow. This kind of silence is not loneliness, though it may begin there. It becomes something more like companionship, with yourself, with the memory of those you've lost, with the parts of you that are still healing. When you watch someone who has lived through deep loss and still moves with gentle composure, you might be seeing the result of many such quiet moments. Moments that didn't look important from the outside. Moments where they chose not to escape their feelings, but to slowly make room for them. It is in this private silence that inner strength is refined. Because strength built in noise and attention tends to rely on noise and attention. But strength built in solitude belongs entirely to the one who carries it. It does not need applause. It does not need proof. It shows itself in small ways, in the capacity to listen without rushing in to fix everything, in the ability to say, "I don't know," when faced with big questions, in the courage to open your heart again, even knowing that loss is always possible. There's another layer to this quiet resilience, the way it changes how a person relates to others. When you have walked through deep grief, you often become less interested in superficial judgments. You know how little you truly see of someone's life just by looking at them. That calm coworker might be waking up every night at 3 a.m. thinking about someone who is gone. That stranger laughing in a cafe might be laughing harder because they know how suddenly joy can disappear. This understanding doesn't make you sad all the time. On the contrary, it can make moments of connection feel more precious. You become more patient with people who are distant or irritable, sensing that they might be carrying something you cannot see. You find it easier to forgive small mistakes, to let go of minor annoyances. You realize that everyone, in their own way, is trying to live with the weight of being human. From a distance, this might look like kindness. Up close, it is a form of humility, the recognition that your pain is not the only pain in the room. It doesn't mean you diminish your own story. It just means you make space for others to have theirs. In this way, grief can open rather than close the heart, if we allow it to. Of course, this process is not neat or linear. There are days when you feel composed and grounded, and days when a song, a smell, or an unexpected phrase can pull you back into raw sadness. Healing does not erase vulnerability, it teaches you how to stand alongside it. Imagine our unnamed person again, years after their losses. They have built a life around work, friendships, small routines. They still have hard days. They still have moments where a memory hits them so sharply they need to step outside, take a breath, let the wave pass. But something is different now. They no longer see these moments as signs of failure or weakness. They don't tell themselves, "I should be over this by now." Instead, they quietly acknowledge, "Love leaves marks. This is one of them." If someone were to ask them, "How did you get through it?" they might struggle to answer, because there was no single trick, no sudden revelation. There were only countless small choices, choosing to get out of bed, to answer a message, to go to an event, to seek help, to rest, to forgive, to remember, to keep living. From the outside, this looks unremarkable. From the inside, it is a slow, ongoing act of courage. When we look at people like Keanu Reeves and Joaquin Phoenix, we might be tempted to search for a clean narrative. They suffered, they transformed, now they are wise. But real inner growth is messier than that. It doesn't follow a straight line, and it rarely arrives with fanfare. What we can see, though, is the way they seem to inhabit their own vulnerability with a kind of steadiness. There's a softness in their seriousness, a willingness to pause, to admit uncertainty, to let emotion show without turning it into spectacle. This is something anyone can learn from, no matter who they are. You may never stand on a stage accepting an award, or sit in front of a camera answering questions about your life. But every day, you are making choices about how you carry your experiences, whether you harden around them or let them deepen you. You can choose to let grief make you smaller, more closed, more cynical, more afraid. Or you can let it carve out space inside you for more understanding, more compassion, more presence. Both paths are human. Both are understandable. But only one allows pain to become part of a larger, richer life instead of the end of it. At a certain point, the mystery of why things happen the way they do stops being a puzzle to solve and becomes something else, a companion. You may never find a satisfying answer to why your particular losses occurred. There will always be a part of your mind that says, "It shouldn't have been like this." That voice is part of your love for what was taken. You don't need to silence it entirely, but you can learn to live alongside it, to let it speak without letting it rule you. In time, you might find that your grief has quietly given you gifts you did not ask for, deeper appreciation for the present moment, a more grounded sense of what truly matters, a gentler way of meeting other people's pain. You begin to measure strength not by how little you feel, but by how honestly you can face what you feel and still choose to move forward. You discover that silence is not empty after all. It is full of the echoes of everything you've survived, everything you've loved, everything you still hope for. And you understand that inner strength is not the absence of brokenness. It is the capacity to hold your broken pieces with care, to arrange them into a life that is still, somehow, worth living. So if you find yourself wondering, on some quiet afternoon, how others manage to carry their losses with such calm, if you look at people like Keanu Reeves or Joaquin Phoenix and sense a depth behind their stillness, if you feel your own grief sitting heavy in your chest and fear that it will always be this way, know this: you are not alone in that uncertainty. The path through grief is not about becoming untouchable. It is about allowing yourself to be touched by life again, gradually, on your own terms. It is about finding small ways to honor what you've lost while still making room for what is yet to come. In the end, perhaps the deepest understanding is a simple one. We do not get over the people and moments that shaped us. We learn to live with them in a new form. In our choices, in our kindness, in our patience, in the way we sit with others in their own hour of need. Through grief, we discover that silence can be a sanctuary, not a prison. Through silence, we discover that inner strength grows not from denying our pain, but from including it in our understanding of what it means to be human. And through that inner strength, we realize that continuing to love, to create, to show up, even after everything we've lost, is not a small achievement. It is, quietly, one of the bravest things a person can do.